Hello, I'm Rachael Oakley, a labour and employment attorney based in Osborne, Clarke's San Francisco offices. I'm going to be joined today by my colleague Amy Moylett, based in our London office, but also a labour and employment lawyer as well. We're going to be talking to you about some of the artificial intelligence AI legal challenges that businesses need to be thinking about when using AI in their employment processes. Thank you for joining me today, Amy. So, the first question that I wanted to talk about really has an impact because of the frequency that we're now seeing employers using AI in their life cycle. So, for example, we're often seeing it in the onboarding phase as people are using it to sift through CVs. Also in the employment review process as it's being used to understand where employees might be missing their targets or exceeding their targets. Employees themselves are also using particularly generative AI as they use it for work content and outputs. So where a business is thinking about using artificial intelligence for the very first time in their employment processes, what are some of those initial considerations that they should be thinking about before doing so?
I think firstly, what's important is for organizations to communicate internally to understand what AI systems are being used within the organization. And then having done that, to establish clear expectations to employees around the use of these tools. Now, an organization might achieve that by amending an existing IT and communications policy, or they might decide to introduce a new acceptable use policy. I think what's particularly important is to introduce staff policies around the use of publicly available AI tools, given that there's a slightly increased risk profile there. And within these policies, there should be clear guidance around the risks associated with the use of these tools, including the importance of not inputting client and confidential information, and also the importance of verifying the accuracy of AI-generated output. Organizations also need to complete their due diligence on the implementation of any new AI tools, again, to fully understand the risks associated with these tools. Within that due diligence, there needs to be an understanding of the quality of the data that the AI system's been trained on, given the risk of algorithmic bias and discrimination from the use of non-representative training data.
Thanks, Amy. And actually, many of your comments touch upon the types of data that go into these types of models. And that makes me think about whether that data could be considered personal data under data privacy laws in the UK and Europe. So thinking about that, actually, what are the kind of data privacy considerations that businesses should be thinking about when they're wanting to make sure they're trying to be in compliance with those GDPR obligations?
So data protection compliance risk is quite wide in this area, and it will extend to requirements around conducting a data protection impact assessment, or commonly known as a DPIA. You'll need to, in the usual way, secure an appropriate lawful basis for your processing activities. You'll also need to comply with the kind of core overarching data protection principles, including, importantly, transparency of the use of these tools. And so that might then mean a need to update your employee and your customer privacy information. And you also need to ensure the accuracy of the data of the individuals that you're using. If the processing activities is taking place across borders, then you also need to bear in mind the requirements around international data transfers. The UK data protection regulator, the Information Commissioner, has already issued extensive guidance around the use of AI tools. And similarly, EU data protection authorities have also taken an active interest in this area and have in fact queried GDPR compliance of some very high profile publicly available tools. So it's definitely an area of focus and one to get right.
Thanks, Amy. There's clearly a lot for businesses to be thinking about just from a data privacy perspective. And obviously that's just one area of legal compliance. Could we now talk a little bit about some of the specific AI regulations that businesses should be monitoring, whether proposed or current, to make sure that they're adhering to that compliance as well?
So in the UK, currently there is no AI-specific regulation that limits the use of AI in the workplace. There are existing anti-discrimination and data protection laws that offer some protection to individuals that are subject to AI decisions in an employment context. No new laws are planned to govern the technology domestically. Instead, the government has indicated in its recent AI white paper that it plans to issue a non-statutory definition of AI for regulatory purposes, and an accompanying set of high-level principles that existing regulators will then work into the application of their existing powers. So this is in stark contrast to the plans in the EU. So in the EU, they are proposing to put in place a full regulatory framework around the use of AI. And that will take the form of the proposed Artificial Intelligence Act that was published back in April 2021. So the AI Act, as drafted, will currently apply to organisations that sell their AI products and services into the union. And at the moment, it's still currently under negotiation, but at the moment, AI used in an employment context is currently categorised as high risk, given the potential impact it can have on individuals' careers and livelihoods. Once that legislation is in place, AI tools will have to be very strict requirements in order to comply with the proposed legislation. And these requirements are very broad, but in essence, kind of encompass all of the responsible AI elements that we'll be familiar with. So things like human oversight, ensuring transparency, data quality, and so on. So any employers that are using these tools in the EU or in relation to their European employees will want to be confident that the tools are either compliant as they come out of the box, or that they understand any compliance requirements that impact them as users of the technology.
Thank you, Amy. That's some really useful insights for our international businesses who are listening to this and who are thinking about using AI to automate some of their processes in the employment space. I know we've also put together a really useful AI and future of work document as well, which contains more information on many of the topics we've talked about and more, and focuses on some of the different perspectives in our European locations as well. So if you would like a copy of that or have some more questions, please do let us know.